Good afternoon, dear participants. Welcome you to the last and final day of the 1 week capacity development workshop on Moodle LMS. So far we have covered Moodle LMS. We have seen how it is implemented, installed on-premise, and you've seen a lot of options available with Moodle LMS in your e-learning model. So this session is not related to Moodle. In this session, I'm just going to give you some information of what other options are available in blended learning. I'll talk of one more learning management system, that is Google Classroom. So Google Classroom in itself is an LMS. It's another variant of an LMS available like Moodle. And later on in the further version of the session, I'll be talking about certain tools and functionalities available like mind maps. So mind maps is basically an utility which helps you deliver course content by creating mind maps and bringing information to a condensed charted form on an image. So we'll be discussing what is mind map, how can you use it in your e-learning, and then there is another software, there's another application which is called exam.net. So it is a Swedish application developed in Sweden and it's being used world over for the purpose of conducting remote examinations. So all the features that we require in conducting a remote examination like safe exam browser functionality and all these kinds of attributes are available in exam.net. So I'll be just discussing briefly as to how can you use exam.net for the purpose of conducting your remote examinations. So all three topics in today's session are not related to Moodle LMS. They cannot be installed inside your Moodle LMS site. They are completely different topics. Google Classroom in itself is an LMS, so it can be used standalone as another variant as compared to Moodle LMS. And the other two topics that I've been talking about, exam.net, it's a site, it's an application wherein you can simply use that site to host and create safe browser exams. It cannot be integrated anyhow within Google LMS. And mind maps as a utility can be used in a very, very generic way for planning and presentation purpose. So all three are different types of utilities and LMS variants that you can use in your e-learning model. So this session has got nothing to do with Moodle LMS installation. Also, these three in itself are very extensive topics. They have practical demonstrations. You actually have softwares and you can perform these operations practically. Google Classroom can emulate and set up just like Moodle LMS. It's a cloud-based LMS, so it's much simpler than Moodle. The installation part is completely skipped. So you can be using all these three variants on different softwares for which you need to go in about learning how to use those softwares. So that is a very extensive topic, and all these three cannot be completed in practical demonstration in 2 hours. So the idea of this session was to just give you a brief know-how of what all other variants are available, and if you're interested, you can explore them further. So let us begin. Okay, so as we all know, the world is moving through critical times with the advent of the deadly COVID-19 or coronavirus. So the global pandemic has impacted almost all walks of life, and academics being one such area that does not remain untouched and rather is critically impacted due to COVID-19 situation since earlier 2020. I'll request all participants to please mute themselves. Uma ma'am, please mute your mic. Thank you. So, according to UNESCO's Education Response Statistics of 2020, across the world, 144 countries imposed a countrywide lockdown and restrictions in economic activities. So, even those countries where partial restrictions were imposed, education and academics is one sector that was closed on priority due to the sensitivity of the age group involved. And as the world is witnessing a series of unlocks, we see that academics is the only sector that is yet to regain its operations in complete capacity. So this situation is here to stay, not just for this term, but for many terms to come for a long while. That is what we can perceive ahead of us. Due to this, 1.5 billion students over the globe have been impacted by virtue of being enrolled in college and universities for the purpose of education. So any student in all across the world that is enrolled in any kind of a university or is using online resources to educate himself and his term is falling in this pandemic year 2020 and forward, his learning and his career is at stake. They are the ones who are critically impacted and continue to remain so. overall close to 2 billion independent learners. Apart from the ones enrolled in universities, there are certain independent or freelance learners, distance education policies that go all around the world. So about 2 billion independent learners that account to the world's 67.7% were affected due to the deadly COVID-19 since March 2020. So that is the scale of people, and more specifically students and learners, being impacted across the globe due to this situation. Although the world is still struggling with recovering from the sudden pandemic, without a proper cure in line, this situation is not going to change, and its impact on academic scenario is going to see multifold responses. So we have to really think about what is the need of the hour, how do we need to reorient our processes, how do we need to think of the future, conducting critical components like examinations in a remote manner, and yet having the learning being compromised least. So that is the priority requirement of the year. So tough times require for a change in outlook and call for preparedness for the future. This changed future scenario instills the need for a paradigm shift in the teaching learning process, which now has transformed to facilitation and learning process post COVID-19. Some postulates that will constitute this change are as follows. First one being addressing the digital divide. So technology has the potential to achieve universal quality education and improve learning outcomes. But in order to unleash its complete potential, technology needs to reach and be present at learners in different remote locations globally, worldwide. So this digital divide and these digital incapabilities need to be required such that infrastructure, connectivity must reach the remotest and poorest of communities in the need of the hour. So access to technology and internet is an urgent requirement in this time, and it is no longer a luxury. All those who were not so well acquainted with technology or probably did not have a complete infrastructure there at their place, at their homes, at the learning environments, have now got it. So the period to accept the change has passed, and now we have begun to embrace it. Next, in the changing times, it also requires us to reorient the curriculum. The conventional curriculum that we were following for teaching learning in a physical classroom cannot be modeled in the exact same way when you move things online. There is a need to reorient this curriculum, the syllabus. Even CBSE and a lot of bodies have gone about, restructuring the curriculum, removing certain topics from the course of 10th and 12th papers, and so on. So while teachers are still struggling to learn with the digital ways of communicating with the students, it is clear that we need to pay close attention to what we teach in this new mode, especially subjects like mathematics or subjects which require a lot of blackboard learning, blackboard based learning. We need to now really think for innovative ways and the complex material. And even if you have certain subjects that cannot happen without physical communication, like communication oriented subjects or subjects which require a lot of group activities, a lot of subjects in the arts domain will require to reorient their curriculum in the present times. Next, as I've been talking about since beginning, blended learning. That is the new reality and it is here to stay. As I've already mentioned, blended learning, being a mix of synchronous as well as asynchronous learning mechanisms, is the new form of distance learning converted to online education. The classroom will now be supplemented by online coursework. So this way, students may be required to be physically present and attend classes on a fewer days due to certain limitations that you can't really ask the student to sit in front of a system with all those hours that he put in his college. You can't ask students to attend an 8 hour or a 6 hour class daily for 6 days a week because of the harmful effects of technology, because of the harmful effects of these machines and devices that we are using. They have a lot of health impacts, eyesight problems, and there are back issues, headaches, and migraines. So we need to really make the students sit lesser in front of these machines as well as learn the maximum, which he would usually do in a physical classroom. So the only way to do that is change the teaching mode to facilitation mode. Give the students certain criteria or a framework to work upon, wherein he can extend his learning using the material that we upload as resources on an LMS, or probably online resources that are available, so that the student can learn at his or her own pace. He doesn't need to continuously be sitting in front of the machine and jeopardizing his health. Next, this requires for a qualitative shift in faculty training as well. The conventional training programs, the conventional faculty training programs which have been there so far, are now witnessing a change. Earlier, we used to have very generic topics related to emerging technologies or changes in the IT sector. But now you see the focus of learning has come on training the teachers for the new ways of facilitation process online, like this capacity development workshop, where we intend to develop in you, where we intend to ingrain in you the capacity to develop an Moodle LMS site at your own premise. So all teachers will have to be trained for online teaching mechanisms as well, apart from their subject area expertise. So this way, we will ensure that teachers are comfortable with technology and are seamlessly able to switch between online and offline modes of teaching curriculum. So the main goal here is that a teacher should feel more empowered to deliver a lecture than ever before, rather than feeling scared as to how will I do it on a physical classroom, how will I make sure that the learners are getting what I intend to, I'm getting maximum receptivity of the class, students are paying attention, all processes which used to happen in person, how will I be able to emulate them on software devices? So the basic idea here is to empower the teacher, not to make the teacher feel more scared of delivering lectures in this new scenario. So that kind of a qualitative shift in faculty training is required. We need to reorient our training programs as well. Then redefining a teacher's role, as I mentioned, teaching learning is now being changed to facilitation based learning, which means what? In this crisis time, it is forcing teachers to reinvent their roles from that of transferring information to now of enabling learning. We cannot make sure, or we cannot be probably on the go to give 100% content to the student ourselves. Whatever little bit in our restricted constraints we'll be able to deliver, after that we need to create that streak in the student. We need to provide him with opportunities in ways wherein he can extend his learning, wherein he can gain maximum and learn on his own self. So students are no longer being termed as students, now they're termed as learners, because they are in this new process of developing the streak of self learning, self imbibed, self motivated learning. So, such kind of a redefinition in processes is also what the world is witnessing. Then there is a need for a wider cadre of teachers. Not just to take a class, do we need a teacher who is a subject matter expert, who is an expert in whatever subject he or she is teaching. Just to take one lecture, there are so many different kind of roles that come into play when you talk of an online class. Like if I have to take this FDP or this capacity development workshop on Cisco WebEx, I need somebody to look after the meeting room. I need somebody to make sure that the participants are entering, they are muted, they are able to hear me. I need somebody to make sure that all the assignments that people are submitting are being checked. Right now we are accepting assignments on an email, but if the assignments are accepted on an LMS like Moodle or Google Classroom, then they are graded properly. What is the progress report? So just to take one lecture, there are so many different kind of roles which come up. And we need, from the beginning, we need a very wide cadre of facilitators and teachers for this process. Slowly and slowly, we can expect that all these roles can be done by one person. Like tomorrow, if I want to interact with you in a capacity building workshop, I'll be able to do it all by myself, end to end, like we do in a class. When I want to take a lecture, I have to just move in and I handle everything. There is no other stakeholder involved. I'm the person who's disseminating knowledge. Similarly, to begin with, we need a wide range of people to help us, to assist us with these processes. For later, when we develop competencies, we can do it by ourselves. Then physical engagement needs to be replaced by e-learning. There is no definite time period as to when we'll be returning to the physical classroom in full capacity. It is still a question. With the rising number of cases again and again, and India witnessing such a high rate of expansion, being the world's second highest number of corona cases to date, there is no date as to when we can promise our learners, okay, let's just do it for this time, and later on ahead in the year when I'll meet you in physical classroom, I will teach you the entire subject again. That is not possible, and that is not going to happen. Did not happen for the previous term, where we had to stop our teaching learning right in between and move to an online system, and does not happen for sure in this term as well. And to my astonishment, it will not happen in the next term as well. There'll be many terms that will be impacted. So there is no time frame as to when things will turn normal. So this is the new normal, where physical engagement is now replaced by e-learning. You like it or not, you may have the complete experience to your benefit or not. This is how things are, and this is how we have to adapt to it. So in this kind of a scenario, physical classrooms, we know, always offer a very high degree of interactivity amongst the teacher and students. We see our learners right sitting in front of us. We are able to gauge who is at pace with me, who has lost the concept somewhere in between, who is confused. The body language speaks so much. We as teachers, when we look at students itself, we can tell how much this person is understanding, how much he or she is paying attention. But the times are very different. Now, when you're teaching in an online mode, mostly due to bandwidth issues, like all of us have our videos turned off in this call. So when you take a class of this magnitude, minimum 60 students, you will not be able to see your learners. You will not be able to be sure that the person whom you are teaching is actually sitting in front of the terminal and learning. Probably he would have just turned on the class and is roaming somewhere else, right? So such kind of challenges, where we continuously have to engage our learners and make sure that the learning happens as intended without any loss, because the times will pass, and with the times the academic curriculum will also advance. When corona situation will be over, all those who had to pass out in 2021 will be the passing out batch in 2021. So the industry and the world out there won't make a distinction that, okay, you passed in the corona time, so I'm going to ask you easier questions, or I'm going to give you simpler projects. So the world will not be sympathetic towards their learning. We have to make sure that we make no change. We have to make this distribution transparency absolutely possible, so that when they graduate in 2021, they have the exact same skill set of any other batch graduating outside a college. So that is a kind of challenge that is there in front of us as learners. Now, every dark cloud has a silver lining. So when situations are so adverse, we are not comfortable with online mechanisms, one benefit which comes out of this e-learning or blended learning mechanism is that we're saving on a lot of resources. Although, yes, there are disadvantages of these devices and continued hours of sitting in front of them, but we are actually saving on a lot of paper. If you see, all assignments being turned in, all examinations being carried out. Earlier, we used to maintain our records in sheets. We used to have hard copies for everything that we want to do, and then we used to bring it to a software report if we needed. So everything is online. There is no pen and paper. So the kind of mechanism, the kind of basic idea with which these learning mechanisms started, these LMS started, was paperless learning. COVID situation was not there when Google Classroom launched or when Moodle LMS began. The main intent of these LMS was to have a paperless teaching learning mechanism, to make things more eco-friendly and beneficial for the environment. So this is one benefit that we derive out of the present chaos that we are facing. So these are the challenges in front of us, and this is the kind of change that we require at present to acquaint ourselves for the situations to come. Just to embrace these change, we have been studying since the last 1 week about Moodle LMS, what options are available in Moodle LMS, what is an LMS. So just to give you a quick recap, emulating your physical classroom to an online, virtual, or an e-learning space is the main intent of a learning management system. The seamless integration or transitional shift in teaching learning, we need to shift our teaching pedagogies to an LMS. That is the main intention why an LMS was there. Everything that you can do in a physical classroom, you should be able to do using an LMS. So with that main intention, first concept of LMS was introduced way back in 1990s. And many countries abroad have been using this LMS or this concept as such to support the concept of e-learning. It is just that We have now been forced to use it. There is no option left with us. But the world had already started using it. Even in India, it's very much prevalent. As we saw, India has the world's second largest number of Moodle sites being registered, next to United States of America. So it has been there, it has been prevalent. It is just that it's now reached our doorstep. So the basic concept of learning management system is to emulate e-learning and make blended learning a reality. Make synchronous and asynchronous lecture delivery possible. So there are many variants of a learning management system available. We've been studying about Moodle LMS. I'll be giving you a brief of what another variant LMS is there, that is Google Classroom. So Google Classroom is a cloud-based LMS and it is a product of Google. It belongs to the Google G Suite for Education package and it is a Google product. Being a cloud-based LMS, Google Classroom does not require you to go through any installation process or any setup that you want to perform in order to use it. Using a cloud-based LMS is as simple as registering on a site and beginning to start your operations. So all the operations that we performed on an LMS or how we used an LMS post day one after the installation process would have seemed relatively easier to you than the day one installation process. That was the main technical part that requires a little technical nitty-gritty to be in place. We need to be sure of the installation. We need to make sure every package is successfully installed. But all operations beyond day two is what Google Classroom permits you to do from day one. You just have to register on Google Classroom with an existing account. That account can be a simple Gmail ID, personal Gmail ID. It can be an organizational account, your school account, or it can be an account registered under G Suite for Education. So all school accounts can opt for this package called G Suite for Education. So if we use Google Classroom using a personal ID, there are certain restrictions or limits which are not present when we use the G Suite for Education account or an account registered with G Suite for Education. Some of the differences that I would like to mention are that, say, suppose if you want to enroll class members in a Google Classroom you want to enroll students in a Google Classroom. So with your personal Google account, you will be able to enroll only 250 students. But when you use an account that is registered with G Suite for Education, your school account, with that you can enroll 1000 students per class. So that is one difference. Now there are many other differences. The number of classes you can create per day. Using a personal Google account, you can create only 30 classes per day. But using an account registered with G Suite, there's no limit to the classes that you can create within a day. Then you can add guardians, the facility of adding guardians just to make them aware of their ward's progress and performance is present in a G Suite for education or a G Suite for school account. With every student, when you enroll a student, you can attach or enroll a guardian as well, so that whatever grades that the student gets or whatever reports or activities that the students perform are being mailed and shared with the guardian simultaneously. So the guardian is also a part of the continued progress tracking of his or her ward. So this kind of a guardian functionality is available when you have a G Suite account. Other features which are there with G Suite and not with your personal Google account, one very important feature is originality reports. So Google Classroom has been evolving and there have been a lot of updates, especially in the recent past, in the recent 6 months that I talk of, because everything is now shifted to online education and there are a lot of competition. Like Moodle is providing so many features. So there is this concept of originality reports with assignments, which is available in the G Suite account. What happens with originality reports is that whenever a student is turning in assignments, if it is an ungraded assignment, if you're asking a student to submit a case study analysis or something of that sort, then until and unless you don't evaluate and read through the student's assignment, the assignment remains ungraded. Now it is possible that after reading 2 or 3 assignments, I figure out that there is a lot of plagiarism. The assignments are copied. Students do that, especially when it is soft copy submission. If you ask them to submit a soft copy file, most of them will not understand the seriousness of submissions or integrity of the submission that has to be maintained. They will just share data or take somebody else's file, change their name and submit it because it is easy. You don't have to write anything on your own. Otherwise, when we were asking for handwritten submission, at least it was going through the students' eyes at least for once. But in a soft copy mode, this is completely possible that a student can cheat or copy assignments. So how to make sure after 2-3 assignments you figure out, oh, all students are copying, there is one master copy and everyone has taken reference from that. So this originality reports is a feature wherein a student can submit an assignment, and the moment student submits an assignment, an originality report is also generated depending upon the content which is available in the Google class, in the Google Drive, and on Google. Like we generate a plagiarism report for our papers. So similarly, there is this concept of originality reports for assignments. So if I'm submitting an assignment and I have copied 70% of it, so I will get an originality report that says, okay, this assignment is 70% plagiarized at these many places. So when you submit that assignment to the teacher, the here is the originality report. Okay, this assignment is copied. So it's very easy to detect plagiarism in such cases. So such are the features which are available with a G Suite for Education account or a school account that is registered with G Suite for Education. Then moving further to certain objectives as to why Google Classroom was invented in the first place. As I said, when these LMS began implementation, COVID-19 was not there. The world did not face coronavirus. So the first and main intention was to have paperless teaching learning. Everything is digital, saving paper and hence environment friendly. Then Google Classroom allows you a lot of resource sharing modes. So you can upload PPTs, PDFs, your Word files. You can even share videos, upload videos, give external URL links, all the kind of resources that you want to share with your students for continued learning beyond the physical classroom or beyond the synchronous communication in blended learning.
Yeah,
It's possible.
can we go for live classes on video?
Yeah, ma'am,
Which
I
would
will
be
be covering that.
okay.
I'll discuss that. So all these things that you want to share, resources, Google Classroom has a feature and it is very convenient. So since it's a Google product, it is a product which is compliant with all other Google products like your Google Drive, your Google Calendar. So they seamlessly integrate with the classroom, being under the same umbrella of Google. Next is online resource sharing. So this tool is used for sharing assignments or resource integration with any subject or related content, online or offline, between teachers and students. So if you want to share or integrate resources online, for that also a lot of options are available in assignment submissions. The main purpose of Google Classroom before of some time was for assignment submission only. So if I talk about Google Classroom, I have been using it since 2016 for the purpose of assignment submission, paperless assignment submission and grading. It is just in the recent past, a lot of updates have been possible with Google, and now there is a online this conferencing mechanism called Google Meet. Most of you would have been aware. So in the current versions of Google Classroom, if you have a school account registered to G Suite for Education, then it integrates Google Meet for physical classes seamlessly. So you don't have to install any plugin. You don't have to go into the technical details of setting up, your video conferencing environment. If you have an account with Google Classroom, I'll be showing you one slide view of it also. It will directly generate a meeting link using Google Meet. So that functionality is present. You can just click on that link and a Google meeting will be set up with all students of your class. So you can take a physical class there. You can have synchronous learning. And apart from synchronous learning, the conventional use case of Google Classroom for assignment submission is present. For assignment submission, resource sharing, you can have discussion posts and forums where teachers can have class-based discussions or students can raise doubts upon which his or her peers or teachers can be interacting. So all those mechanisms are also possible. Then for assignment grading, there are a lot of advanced features, like there are certain grading tools, and you also can upload your own rubrics. You can upload your own assignment assessment parameters and map it to probably outcomes in your rubrics. So all parameters that you want to specify or given rubrics that you want to have for any assignment, you can upload that while creating an assignment for students. Then it has a feature for broadcasting announcements, not just to students, but to their guardians as well. So if there is some announcement that I need to give to my class, I want to share with them, I can either have a discussion post or I can mail all students of my class in just one group. There is just one option wherein you select all students of your class and you are able to shoot in an. So communication and extended broadcasting is very, very easy when you use Google Classroom. Next is it enriches all classroom-based communication. That is, it allows each student to create slides with their own information. It also allows students to interact with other peers to, have group assignments or group discussions or group-based case studies. Students can mail to the teachers or ask for the teacher's review on such cases as well whenever they need. So such are the objectives, and with the current times, Google Classroom is only evolving. There are new and new updates so as to make it more competitive with different flavors of LMS available. Now, some benefits that we derive from using the Google Classroom. First is that it is very, very user friendly and customizable. It is a cloud based LMS. There is no on premise implementation. There are no technical details that you need to take into consideration. You can simply create a Google Classroom account using your Gmail account and customize it as and when you want. Teachers can set up classes, invite students, and even classes can be held by co-teachers. They can be co-taught classrooms. It's not necessary that one teacher has to be enrolled or one teacher will be, taking up a class. So on the Classworks page, we can share information, assignments, questions, and materials. There is a stream page, which is also similar to the dashboard of Moodle LMS, and it's completely customizable in Google Classroom. Then it is asynchronous and eco-friendly. It is a cloud-based solution. So whatever we have on Google Classroom, whatever resources that we share or the students are turning in certain activities, it's completely to your own pace. Student can access the classroom anytime, turn in a submission, check for the material. Teacher can asynchronously upload the content, and the moment teacher uploads content, it will be shared with all students. So it is not that both of you have to be present on the same physical space for learning. Then there is a lot intricate organization. As for every learner, if you are creating a class as a teacher, so the contents are arranged in such a way as to what are the best interests of a teacher. What do I want to do with my class? What are the assignments that have come, who all turned in late, which submission is not there, which student gave me a class comment? That will be available from the teacher perspective. But if I'm logging in as a student, if I'm joining a class, then only information that relates to me, that what are the assignments that are to be submitted, is there a classroom meeting that is going on that I can join. So very customizable and intricately organized as per the different users. Now it is compatible with a lot of applications, external applications. Apart from the G Suite collaboration, all Google products, it seamlessly integrates with your Google Docs, calendars, drives, and forms. So whatever data that we are storing in our Google Classroom or uploading in a Google Classroom will be actually stored in the Google Drive related to the Google Classroom. So it's a cloud-based LMS. So the cloud storage representation of the data will be visible in your Google Drive. So if I've logged in from my personal account, then I'm uploading certain material on Google Classroom, or students are taking, students are taking in assignments and they're submitting assignments back to me. So in that case, all the data that is stored in my Google Drive if I want to see it in the same structure in which it was uploaded in the class. So if in Unit 1 a student has submitted assignment 1, so within my Google Drive there will be a folder Unit 1 of my class, whatever Java class that I'm taking, and all assignments will come inside that folder. So very intricately organized, and I can see the content in my own drive. Then it is economical. The basic version provides all features that we'll be requiring free of cost. If you opt for G Suite for education, there is a registration cost. There is certain financials that are involved there because there is an extended set of features. But if you even use from your personal Gmail ID, so all basic features, like you can add 250 students in a class. So at the maximum, you will have 60 or say 100 students in a class. Even if we take 2 batches, that is fine. So all basic requirements that you need to perform are there in the personal account email versions as well. Then there is an extensive administrative support, very helpful and extended community of Google who are developing this classroom have an extended support for all features. If you're facing any problems, there are a lot of FAQs that have already been answered. Then there are support links, there are email addresses to which you can shoot in a query and they can always revert back to you with their answers. These are certain collaborators of the G Suite which work with Google Classroom. As I said, all compliant Google apps, Drive, Docs, calendars, everything is compatible. Google Classroom can be accessed on any underlying operating system. It does not have any restrictions when it comes to Windows, Base OS, or Android, iOS, anything. So it's compliant on any underlying operating system. And also, as a site, it can be opened. The cloud access is available on any browser of your choice. So it's very user friendly and compatible with a lot of collaborators mentioned here. The main target audience of benefiters of Google Classroom are from the educational and training sector. So if you want to conduct classes, if you want to emulate your physical classroom to an e-space, Google Classroom is a very convenient choice. Also, a lot of training institutions, especially in the healthcare domain, government healthcare trainings, they have been opting to Google Classroom for users. Then there are freelance educators, independent learners, and students that benefit out of the features from Google Classroom. Now I'll be talking of certain operations from the perspective of teachers, students, and different other communication and evaluation operations which are available. So first, certain teaching operations or operations which suffice to a teacher in an LMS that we'll be discussing with the Google Classroom. First one is student enrollment. So Google Classroom allows you to enroll students directly by adding them as a teacher, or it can even allow students to enroll themselves in a class. So both things are possible. So the two mechanisms work like if I am a teacher, I've created a class. Either I manually enroll all students by entering their email ID, and they'll get an email as to this teacher have asked you to join the class. Please accept. When they accept the invitation, they will become a part of my class. Or when I create a class, there is a unique code which gets generated, which is called the class code, right? So it's a unique code or an ID to a class. Whenever I share this class code with all students, all they have to do is go onto the Google Classroom site and click on join class and paste that class code which the teacher has shared. So everybody and anybody who has the class code can join my class. So both sort of enrollment options are available with Google Classroom. One teacher can create multiple classes, can create multiple classrooms using his or her account. There is no distinction. The landing page for the students and teachers will be the same. The only difference will be teachers will be creating classes and students will be enrolling, or they will become a part of the class. Now, if you're using a personal Gmail ID and you're setting up your Google Classroom using that account, then you are in complete control of your classes. You are teachers, you can create your classes, you can enroll students, you can do all sorts of operations. But in case you have a G Suite for Education account or a school account, there will be an administrator or a G Suite admin which will be handling the basic classroom of the school or for the institution, and he can add members as teachers, and then the teachers can create their classes and enroll students. So that hierarchy comes in place with a admin adding teachers and then the teachers creating their classes if you have a G Suite for Education account. Now, as I said, one class can have multiple teachers. Like maybe we are talking of one class or one batch where we have a morning program or an evening program being taught by different teachers, or there are certain practical concepts or practical subjects wherein one teacher is teaching and there is a lab assistant or there is another teacher who's helping in the labs. So multiple teachers can also be enrolled in a class or can also join a class as co-teachers. So both functionalities are available for single taught as well as co-taught classrooms. Then a lot of resource types, as I mentioned, the resource material, quizzes, assignments, PDFs, URLs, videos. A lot of resources can be added in Google Classroom. It also gives you the functionality of having exit tickets or pollings. Quick exit tickets wherein you can post a question to students and then view the results of the poll or the question within the Google Classroom is also possible. Then there is tool integrated teaching. So not just the basic feature set which is available with Google Classroom, you can also integrate many tools, grading tools and categories that you want for operation purposes in your Google Classroom. So if there is a functionality in which I require that I'm creating an assignment and whatever grades students are getting are automatically being populated in the gradebook like Moodle, and I want to now push these grades to an external system like an SIS, a student information system, where I have a common repository of all students in my class, in my batch. And now I want the student lists to have the grades being pushed automatically. So you can integrate SIS for the purpose of pushing grades or for the purpose of getting basic student information from. So that is also one opportunity or one possibility in a teaching operation. Next are evaluation operations. So these mainly cater to assignments and quizzes. So you can create assignments, either graded assignments or ungraded assignments, or you can even ask students to turn in special files as assignments like code files. You want a Python file, a .py file, or a .java file or .c file, any file being submitted as an assignment, you can do that. You can have them graded at your own convenience, or you can set up a grading parameter that okay, the grade will be out of 100, teacher will give grade out of 100, or any alphanumeric based grading is also possible. So for assignment evaluation purpose, there are certain features available. The most advantageous features when we are pre-planning a class is advanced scheduling. So what happens in case of advanced scheduling is that, like I said, in an LMS, you don't need to plan as and when you're taking lectures. You can plan in advance. So Google Classroom also gives you this facility of planning in assignments and resource materials well in advance and hiding them or disabling their display from the student. Once the student is able to see the assignment, then only he or she will perform operations. But it can be possible that today I am at, say, lecture 5 and I have planned assignments till lecture 10. So those 10 assignments can be scheduled in advance or scheduled on a prior date, because after this assignment should be open after 5 days. So such kind of operations are also possible, advanced scheduling or drafting of not just assignments but even post announcements. Like today I'm teaching and I say probably by Wednesday the students should get an announcement that they have a class test on Sunday or Saturday. So such an announcement can also be pre-scheduled or advanced scheduled. So this one feature is available with assignments. Next, we have evaluation. We can evaluate assignments using our custom rubrics and share feedback with the student simultaneously. So not just giving grade in an assignment, it also gives you the feature of giving a custom remark to the student, that what were the deficiencies in your assignment, what you need to improve upon, or some specific student based remark is also possible. So such evaluation operations are very much helpful when we are evaluating assignments and quizzes in Google Classroom. Is there a doubt? Somebody unmuted? So, ma'am, I'll not be able to demonstrate because I have a very limited time frame. So this session is only meant for the purpose of making you aware of what features are available with Google Classroom, Mind Maps, and Exam.net. So demonstration of all these three tools is not possible in today's session. That's not the agenda. Probably later on, in any other FPP, if we take the extended sessions, we can go in for that. Next are administrative options. From the purpose of an administrator or a person who's been operating Google Classroom with administrative privilege, one very important feature with Google Classroom is single sign-on. So to have a Google Classroom account, you don't need to register all by itself. If you have an existing Gmail ID, that Gmail ID can be continued as a single sign-on privilege in Google Classroom as well. right? So single sign-on access makes registering with Google Classroom very, very convenient and simple. Then data protection, there are a lot of terms and conditions which apply to using Google Classroom, and data protection policies are in place because it's a Google compliant software. So you can really be sure that although your data is on the cloud, it is protected as per all norms of Google. The extensive user support community of Google helps answer all your queries, your doubts, integrate, your questions. Even if you write to them, if you write to the support team, they reply back to you within 24 hours. And there is a lot of assurance that your system will never go down. Whenever I click on my Google Classroom site, it will always be available. Like that is not the case in some on-premise installations, wherein we say, okay, this is an on-premise installation, and tomorrow if it's a breakdown, the system breaks, or probably the database is corrupt, or any other technical problem, students will not be able to see the site until and unless I make up for it. So that kind of a scenario is not there with Google Classroom. Then permissions management. Different user roles can be restricted with privileges and permissions from the administrator if you're using a G Suite account, or if you're using a personal account, then all privileges are there at your end as well. SIS integration, as I mentioned, bringing in data from an external tool like SIS and pushing back data to your SIS system, student information system. Google Classroom has features for the same. Then user metrics, who turned in an assignment when. If I'm talking of a Google Meet class, if I'm taking a class on Google Meet, then how many students attended my class? The attendance tracker integrated with Google Meet will help you, get an attendance list of all attendees in a class. All these types of user related metrics are possibly populated with Google Classroom. Since being a Google product, so there are two modes of learning it. Either you learn it independently as a learner, or even there are professional training programs that I'll be mentioning towards the end of these slides. There are some programs which are available with Google. You can enroll in for those programs, educator level training 1 and educator level training 2, wherein you can get to know the basics of learning or train from the professionals, and you also get a certificate for that. So you can say you're a certified trainer or a certified expert in handling these operations with Google Classroom. So a lot of professional training programs are also present with Google. Now I'll be discussing the basic structure of the Google Classroom, how it looks. So as I said, it's very convenient and very easy to use. If you just type in Google Classroom or classroom.google.com on your search engine or in the address bar, so you'll be redirected to a Google Classroom page where it will ask you to sign up. So you sign up using an existing Gmail ID, or you have an account that is registered with G Suite for Education, your school account, something that ends with a .org or a .edu, right? So such kind of an accounts, if you've registered with G Suite for Education, if you want to register your school account, so there is proper process which is available on the Google Classroom site. So that there you can sign up for a basic free model, which after some days will ask you for a payment, say a 14-day free trial. Then after that they'll ask you for some payment or packages. Some plans are available wherein you can register for the G Suite for Education purpose. Once you have your registration done, or if you don't want to register for G Suite for Education, just want to have your Google account with your Google credentials, the next thing that happens is you log in into your Google account, and your landing page will ask you to create a class or join a class. There are only two options. So either you create a class or you join a class. If you are a teacher and you decide to create a class with just basic details, class name, and what batch are you referring to, what subject are you talking about, the landing page after creating a class will have four main tabs. These are the tabs which are essentially of utmost importance in a Google Classroom account. So these tabs are your stream tabs, classwork tabs, peoples, and grades tab. When I talk of the stream tab, this is like my news feed or landing page. It's like a dashboard in Google Classroom. So if I have created a class as a teacher, so all basic details of the class, any assignment that has been turned in, any announcement that I have made, all of it will appear on the stream tab. Then in the classwork tab, if you want to create assignments, you want to upload resources, all the data intensive operations which you want to perform are to be done in the classwork tab. This has functionality for, like, we have been playing some quizzes. I have created a quiz in the first lecture in Introduction to Moodle LMS where you were graded on basis of your answers. So you can create such kind of graded quizzes or blank quizzes. You can convert them into customized grading using Google Classroom. That quiz was created using Google Classroom. So such functionalities are available. You can ask for assignments, you can ask for assignment submissions, you can upload a lot of resources, PDFs, PPTs, videos. Every data intensive operation that you want to do to supplement your e-learning will be done in the Classworks tab. Next tab is the People's tab. People's tab will just show you who are the students in your class. So if you have students already enrolled, so complete listing of all those students will come in the People's tab. If you don't have students enrolled, then you can enroll students manually from the People's tab. Or if you want to see that, okay, this is a student, I want to enroll a guardian next to the student. Such kind of operation is also present using the People's tab. Whatever assignments or submissions that a student is making, for which if the student is automatically graded or if the teacher is grading the student, the automatic grade book that generates out of this assignment or submission work will be seen in the grades tab. So in one course, over a period of the course, if you've created certain assignments and if you're grading students, so complete internal listing or complete grade book will be visible inside the grades tab. So these are the four main tabs which provide for the different options available with Google Classroom. This is the basic look and feel of a Google Classroom account. This is actually the front page of my Google Class, which I'm currently working on. So if you see, the four tabs that I'm talking of are available right here on the top. They're available right here on the top: stream, classwork, peoples, and grade. This is the name of my class. This is the morning batch that I'm teaching. And here, this is the landing page, the stream page that I have opened up for my Google Classroom. Now, this is a G Suite for Education account. This account is my school account that is registered with G Suite for Education. So you can see here, I have this functionality of generate a meeting link. So if I want to take up a class, if I want to set up a Google class and I want students to join that class for the purpose of lecture delivery, simply just click on this link and it will redirect you to a Google meeting. So this is as easy as it is. You just click on this link. All students who will be enrolled in this class will get a notification that your class has started. And they can also click on the link that is mentioned in the notification or in the stream page, and they can simply join the class. This option that you see here for a class code is the unique class ID that I have been talking about. So if I want anyone to join my Google class who is present in my batch, I will share this class code. This is a unique number that is generated by Google Classroom each time you create a class. And this will not change. You cannot delete it, and this will not change during its entire lifetime of a class. So you can pick up this class code and share it over email or WhatsApp with your students, and students can come and join this class. So this is how your basic look and feel of a stream page is. Then from the Classworks tab, you can create multiple assignments, upload resources. Then you have functionality of viewing who all are enrolled as students or users in your Google Classroom that you can see in the people section. One very important feature with Google Classroom is that once you create a class with Google Classroom as a teacher, you cannot delete the class. You can only archive the class. So if I have created a class, I will be able to archive the class. When I archive a class, it means something similar to a soft delete, which means it will not go away from the system. It will not go away from my Google account, but it will not be seen. It will not be active anymore. And this feature has been introduced with the intention to make things more convenient. Like right now, I'm teaching a Java programming class to a batch which is presently functioning from August till December. Then in the next semester, I'll be teaching some other subject. Say I'll be teaching object-oriented analysis and design. When the next term comes, and again, I have this batch coming in from August to December. Then again, I'll have to teach Java programming. So if I delete a class or if I want to reuse my class and then Please mute yourself. I request you.
Ma'am,
Hello.
hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. You were talking about we can like, how should we do it, and if we to have a next batch of students in the next coming semester, but the same course is allotted. Is it possible to remove or let these students leave the classroom for the next
Yeah,
batch
that is
or
what I
something
was
like that,
telling.
or we have to
That is
create?
what I was telling. I have not completed my point. If you just hear me out, probably your answer will be there. So this is what I was saying. It allows you to archive classes. So the benefit of that is today, suppose if I'm teaching Java programming, and in the next semester I'm teaching some other subject. I don't want Java to come as a class in the next semester. But when I teach semester 3, I can reactivate or unarchive that class again. So all the data and all the assignments which I've uploaded this year can be reused in the next semester. I can just remove student submissions and I can introduce it as a new class to my next batch. So that kind of a feature is present when it allows
Then
you
how
to archive
done?
classes. I can't hear you
Then
very
how it
clearly,
is to
ma'am.
be done, ma'am?
It can be
How
done
it is
by
to be done, ma'am?
archiving the class. If you are on the landing page, the class that you click on, there is
Yeah,
an
ma'am.
option for archive on the landing page, not on stream page. You click on this
Where?
option here. I'm not giving a practical demonstration, ma'am. I'm just going to guide you.
Okay, okay, ma'am.
So a class can be archived. It can be reinstated later on when you need. Yeah, is there any other query?
Ma'am, attendance, any summary of attendance that is possible,
I'm not able to hear you
or we
clearly,
have to
ma'am. If you
see,
can write your doubt in the chat box, it will be easy. Your voice is breaking.
okay, I'll do that.
Okay. So this is how your Google Classroom looks like and the operations that you can perform with it. Next, the concept of originality reports. Whenever a student is submitting an assignment, like this is an assignment submission page, I've just shown you a snapshot. If a student is trying to submit in an assignment, then along with that, a student can be asked to turn in an originality report or a plagiarism report as well. So this feature will check that as to how much plagiarized is the submission, how much is the similarity index in the assignment, and how much copied it is. So this originality report feature also comes with your G Suite for Education accounts. This is what an originality report looks like. All the text that is copied, it will give you a reference from which line number it is copied and what is the percentage of similarity. Now I've mentioned that there are certain training programs available on the Google Classroom site. If you want to train yourself for basic or advanced training in Google Classroom usage, then there are these are paid training programs, educator level 1 and 2 trainings available with Google. So once you do these trainings, it's like a certified training that you have, that okay, you are a certified trainer now you can function with Google Classroom and all its features as an LMS. Some certification programs are also available for certified trainer, certified innovator, and G Suite collaborator. So these were the basics of Google Classroom as an LMS, its different variants. So if you have any queries, please write in the chat box or unmute yourself. I have one query here from Suman ma'am. How do we ensure attendance and originality report? So, ma'am, whenever a student will be submitting an originality report, he'll actually be attaching it with an assignment that he's turning in. So, when you ask for an assignment submission, a complete listing comes which student turned in on time if you're giving a due date for the assignment. So, complete listing will come the student turned in on time, the student was late in his submission, right? So, how many submitted and how many did not submit. So, this entire status will come in your grading section. You can see that for assignments. Any other query for Google Classroom?
we are uploading a document or a maybe PDF, can it be converted into some link or something like that, or it is not needed?
I didn't get it, ma'am. Link as in?
That, when we are uploading some material, maybe in a doc form or maybe a PDF file, and we also need, I also want a link to be developed for that particular assignment or
Yes.
that I have uploaded.
Yes,
Is it
yes.
possible?
Yes, there is a shareable link with all assignments and resources. So it can be possible you want to shoot in an email as well that, okay, this assignment or this resource material I've uploaded, you can click directly from this link. It will lead you to that assignment or resource on Google Classroom. So the shareable link option is available. It will display on their class page as well, and we can access it directly from the link too. Both options are available. So I got one question here. Can we export and import documents with Google and Google Classroom? No, sir. There are two mutually exclusive LMS. They have no functionality that is compliant to them. So there is no such feature. The only thing is you can download documents or you can have a repository of Moodle documents and then upload it separately to Google Classroom. So the seamless integration thing will not be possible. But yeah, exclusive export and import is the only option available.
Ma'am, one more thing I want to know. This
Yes,
GIS, how does it help, GIS, how does it help in Google Classroom activities?
ma'am, your voice broke a lot. So if you can type out, I'll answer. I could not get the question.
Okay, I'll just chat.
So a course category in Google Classroom is actually a class. You create a class and that is everything. That's your subject related class. The class can be, you can say the class is a category where I have two separate set of students being enrolling for the same class. So there is no category exclusive option. Google Classroom only deals with classes, class creation and class enrollment. That's it. So G Suite is like some features of G Suite are automatically. Uttam sir, if you can please mute the participants, my voice is echoing. Thank you. So yeah, so G Suite, some features of G Suite like the basic applications which we have in the Google Suite, say your calendar, Drive, Docs, all these seamlessly integrate with Google Classroom because it is a Google product. But if I talk of one special initiative which is G Suite for Education, that specifically has features of Google or probably tool sets within the Google umbrella which are more suited for the education purpose. So this is where the Google Classroom lies in the G Suite for Education initiative. So if you have an account that is registered with G Suite for Education, so a lot many more features become available with Google Classroom. Otherwise, all compliant Google apps and technologies, the different Google collaborators will work seamlessly with Classroom. We'll have no problem there. Anything else? I shall move on. So the next topic that we have today is mind maps. So mind maps is actually a tool. It's a type of a utility which helps you disseminate your content online in a more effective manner. What is a mind map? A mind map is actually a picture, a diagram that represents the hierarchical breakdown of a concept. So it's a diagram that is used to visualize information or organize information in a more intricate manner. The main idea with a mind map is that it shows relationships amongst pieces of the whole, and the power lies in simplicity. So the base idea of using mind maps not only lies with online education or blended learning, but you can use mind maps for other planning and presentation purposes in your day-to-day activities as well. Right? So one major advantage with mind maps is that whenever you look at a mind map, it instantiates or it ignites the metacognitive skills of your thinking. So it's very intuitive to something that relates to a neural network or something that relates to a brain's logic of understanding things, right? So typically, when used in an instructional setting, students who complete a concept map or a mind map have certain ideas which are engraved in their mind in a more logical manner. So the base idea lies here is whenever I am disseminating some information to you, whenever I'm speaking on an online platform or you're listening to me, or probably we have, students reading from slides or accessing content that is already present to them, the interpretation can always vary. Some portion you might miss out due to network connectivity issues, some portion which a teacher says you're not able to move with her pace in an online classroom. And whatever you read and understand or interpret from the text is also different when it concerns to different people. So, a mind maps is one utility which helps you get the crux of the idea and bring it at one place, establish relationships, and imbibe those relationships in the mind of the learner as the trainer wants. So, as I want the concept to be understood by my students, I will simply detail out a mind map for the same. Now, where is it used and how can we use it in an online teaching learning mechanism? The base use for mind maps is in brainstorming. Whenever you're brainstorming an idea, so we start logically also like that. Okay, I'm supposed to address this problem. This is my use case, and now from this, okay, I have these many options available in me. This option will provide this alternative, so on and so on. We start building a hierarchical tree kind of a structure in our mind as to solve a problem or brainstorm ideas for different approaches to a problem. So, problem solving and brainstorming activities work very well when they are designed with a mind map. As far as an instructor is concerned, the maximum use of mind maps for me is when I have to plan lessons or lecture delivery. So if I have to plan a course and I know, okay, this is my main subject, and this main subject has some subtopics or subunits, and arising from some subunits, I have further, subtopics that I have to cover. In which priority order do I want to cover? What is the task? I can set up tasks with my different activities that, okay, unit 1 I should be completing within 1 month, so unit 2 should be started at the beginning of second month and should probably span till the beginning of third month. So this way we want to set up tasks or plan for lectures or probably give a brief lookout of what things are to your learner in a very concise and a concrete picture, because a picture speaks thousand words. When you see a picture, you understand way better, and that too a picture that is organized in the same way that your brain functions. So the adaptability is maximum. So in lesson planning, curriculum delivery, and lecture delivery is where mind maps suffice of maximum use. Now, when students are taking classes in an online mode, it is not necessary that they will be able to make notes or they will be, at the same pace. Because as a teacher, when you are teaching in a physical classroom and you are writing simultaneously on the blackboard, then probably your pace of teaching somehow matches with the student. But if I'm a teacher, all my content is right in front of me on a slide, and I ask you to take notes. So the pace with which I am teaching, because I am not writing at the same time, that will differ from the pace at which the student is grasping. The student is taking notes. First of all, he's understanding, then he's taking notes, and meanwhile, you have moved very fast. You have moved very ahead of the topic. So, how to take effective notes in an online lecture delivery mechanism, that can also be done using mind maps. Next, all these mind maps help students also in the process of memorizing and presentation. So when a student has to appear for a presentation, he needs to have a brief layout of what he wants to talk about. So that time he cannot read through the lecture slides or he cannot read through his script. So he needs to have a very brief understanding, or even that will suffice to you as a speaker. When you want to take up lectures in any kind of mechanism, physical as well as virtual, you want to have a very brief representation of what you want to speak about, your bullets in place. So such kind of activities can also be very well done if drafted using mind maps. Base principle with mind maps is that you begin with a central idea and you start expanding from that idea. You begin from a central idea that we call a topic, and when you expand from that topic, you generate certain subtopics, and slowly in those subtopics, whatever ideas or further implementations that you think of arise at branches or twigs out of those topics. So it's like a hierarchical tree that we are creating. You just have to begin, draw, and refine. There is no set rules to drawing your mind. So this is how things will look like. The central idea will come in the center. What I'm going to talk about, if I'm talking of lesson planning for my course, so Java syllabus planning will come in between. So the central idea comes here. Then from the central idea will arise out the subtopics or the sub branches. From those sub branches will have further twigs and subtopics that come. So this is the basic representation of a mind map. So this is how a mind map would ideally look, where the related ideas and subtopics and topics are connected by some relation. So the related ideas will be connected to subtopics, and in turn subtopics will be connected to a central topic. I'll also be showing you how sample few mind maps as to how a mind map would look at the end. How do we, perceive a mind map to be? So it will be more clear when I show you certain examples. Now, the base idea here is that we are giving everything in a lot of brief and concise manner. So the simpler it is, the more powerful and the more easily adaptable a mind map is. The more complex you make things, the maximum information that you feed in a mind map, it will be difficult to interpret or understand from the perspective of a viewer, that what the user wants to say, what the person is trying to convey. So keep it short, keep it simple, and do not have any complexities, as less complexities as possible. Mind maps can be developed either through freehand drawing, or you also have certain softwares which are available that enhance your process of developing mind maps through certain additional functionalities and tool sets available. Some softwares I've mentioned here: Mind Map, Lucidchart, eDraw Mind Map. So out of these, the software that I use to create mind maps is eDraw Mind Map. It's an free of cost download. You can simply type eDraw Mind Map and an installer would be there in place. You can install it. Advanced features are available in the pro version, but if you require basic functionality, if you just want to draw a simple mind map with some basic functionality, that is available. So you can use eDraw Mind Map to draw your mind maps as a software. This is how the beginning screen of my mind map eDraw software actually looks like. When you download, it just sets up. So these are the different templates or representation in which a mind map can be drawn. It can either be drawn as a radial map or a right aligned map, or in a tree hierarchical manner, or in an organizational charting. Rest all these representations apart from the four are available in the pro version. So generally we draw mind maps in the radial map format, that the central idea comes in between and rest all other ideas are branching out of the central point. It is not necessary that you draw a mind map always from the scratch. There are some available templates, there are some available options also available with mind maps that you can use to draw it as a software. So you can also use one of the templates and just change in your data. You can skip from the process of thinking and imagining, or more intuitively refining your mind map and drawing it right from the beginning. So that you can also be using a template. All these templates are available free of cost, and you can just change the data in these templates according to your requirements. Now some templates available give us a brief view as to where we can use a mind map, how we can make use of this software. So mind maps are not just used in education sector, they are used in all walks of life. If I talk of corporates in having the cost benefit analysis of a company, or probably in content based marketing, there is a lot of planning and product marketing that goes on, a lot of brainstorming that goes on, which can be done using mind maps as a software, right? So this is one area where you can use mind maps: content marketing, cost benefit analysis, product marketing. Also this activity called SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. This analysis activity, wherein we do this sometimes in our trainings also, student based trainings, wherein we want to develop an insight of the constituent of a person and how to overcome the shortcomings, how to represent the complete profile of a person in the best possible way, how to improve upon the SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis can also be developed using a mind maps. personal activities like wedding planning, party planning, birthdays planning, your financial plans, job interview preparation, these activities can also be planned using a mind map. So these are a few examples of mind maps. So this is an example of note taking using mind maps. So student is learning this topic here, which says an introduction to speech act theory. And this topic has certain subparts, direct versus indirect speech structure. And during a lecture, what a student understands from each of the subtopics he has mentioned in these tweets. So now if two topics are related, like structure is related to this box, this can also be mentioned here, right? And if this topic the student has been studying from this book called Classification by John Cyril, then what the book says about the topic is also detailed in the mind map. It's just a very short summary or a brief of what the student understands about the topic. Exam preparation, if I have to prepare for an exam, what are the topics that I have to cover? You can have different kinds of options or icons available to specify which topic is covered. Like all topics in green, vectors I've covered, projectile motion I've covered, Newton's law I'm moderately familiar with, but centripetal acceleration I'm very weak at. So based upon your learning, you can also provide color coding bullets to it. And then there is also a feature that will help you prioritize. You can have numbers also, that in one unit I need to first do projectile motion, then I'll do free body diagram, so on and so forth. So these are the topics that I want to cover. This is the formula chart. So mind maps helps you write custom mathematical formulas also as notes. It is not necessary you have to only write text. You can write formulas also. There is a formula editor window, proper window available in the software, where you are mentioning formulas and laws. Then what are your last minute check boxes that you want to tick before you go in for the exam? Because there are times we don't remember a lot many things under stress. So I want to check for a calculator, I have an ID, I have a black pen or a ruler. So all this kind of planning and preparation for an exam a student does can also be represented using a mind map. Similarly, I've shown for essay writing. This is an example for personal planning, like financial planning, that is done using mind maps. So if I'm planning for my finances and if I have certain life goals, so in order to achieve those life goals, what are my assets? Where do I need to invest more in? What are my networks where I can, ask for certain financial support? How do I reach to my goals? What is the investment that I need to make in order to be able to acquaint it till the end of my my retirement? So all this kind of financial planning can also be done using mind maps. This is a very personal use case wherein you can have birthday plannings or party plannings also done through mind maps. So if you see here, every information is available right in front of you. You don't need to really look for diaries or notes. Probably you've planned for the birthday of one child in one diary, you've written so many things, and then there is another child after a few years you want to plan the birthday for. You've lost your hard copy notes. So having everything on a software driven mode makes it more accessible and more persistent for the future. So if I want to plan for a birthday party, what are the different ideas that I have for a theme, gifts that I want to give, colleagues or invitations to be sent to which all people, options with food and catering. So this is how you can plan for birthdays or personal events as well. So mind map just does not have use case in one particular requirement set. It has a very extensive use case, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life as well. Okay, so we can just while using mind maps, we can have a lot of structured writing. We can attach multimedia, images, text, even sometimes external files. We can collaborate our mind maps with others. We can share our mind maps with students. We can export our mind maps into certain custom formats. Like I can export my lesson plan mind map into a Word file. I can convert it into a table of content or a lecture plan. So if I've created a mind map and now I want to develop a proper Word based lecture plan, so just I can export it to the Word format. It is possible. I don't need to go about the process of recreating it again and again. So any queries in mind maps? If there are no queries, shall I move further? No, it's not a part of Google Classroom, ma'am. It's a standalone utility. It's a separate tool that you can use to aid your online teaching. These are three
You
separate
can,
topics.
you can move further, ma'am, please.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just a minute. There is some problem. Just give me a minute. Okay, the last topic for today is exam.net. So I'll be giving you just a brief of what exam.net is and how can you use this application for conducting distance examinations. So first of all, exam.net is not a part of any LMS. It's not a part of Moodle. It's not a part of Google Classroom. It's an application. It's a software. It's basically a site available with you, which is using which you can host remote examinations. So it's an altogether different product in itself. It's a Swedish product developed in Sweden. So we can estimate the outreach of mind maps the outreach of exam.net with the fact that almost one third of all national examinations or national level examinations in Sweden are carried out using exam.net. It's a very famous software, it's a very famous application or option available for conducting online examinations. So if you simply type exam.net, it will lead you to the hosted site of exam.net on Google, and you can simply register as a teacher, create an exam, share the exam key with student. Student has to come on exam.net page, enter the key and give the exam. As simple as that is. No need for any registration. No, it's completely free of cost up till 31st of December 2020. At least till that
Ma'am,
time they have. Yeah.
ma'am, whether we can deploy it in our own premise,
No, no, sir, you can't. You have to use it. It
like
is an
Moodle?
external application. No, no, no. That's not possible. So Moodle is the only on-premise option that we have discussed so far.
Ma'am,
Yes,
is it a kind of
ma'am, I could not get you. There was a lot of echo. If you can write your doubt in chat box, probably I'll take it from there. Both options are available, ma'am. Proctored is also available, and a complete standalone or an independent application hosted as an examination is also available. I'll discuss what features are available. So probably there it will get clear. Proctored exam is also possible with exam. So it's just a kind of an application that helps you post remote examinations. So it's a site. It's someone else's software. You just have to go and register there as a teacher for your school. Many schools are registered already. So if your school is already registered, you just simply select your school. If your school is not registered, you add the information of your school. So what will happen? All teachers registering with your school account will be in the same group. So if your school is already registered and I am registering for your school, so you and me will be in the same school group account, right? So it's as simple as just going, creating an exam, sharing an exam key, and being very sure that the exam is going to be conducted in a very safe manner, because exam.net is only hosted with the purpose of conducting examinations. Now both type of examinations, so far we have seen creating quizzes, we have been creating certain assignments, graded assignments, we have Google forms wherein I'm marking you on base of Google Forms. But what in case of examinations where I want the student to take up a proper subjective paper? I want the student to write answers and submit those answers to me. And at the same time, I want to make sure that even if the student is taking this exam from the comfort of his own, he or she is not cheating. He or she is not opened a separate tab or is not cheating. So the functionality of safe exam browsers or safe browser exams is very much incorporated in exam.net. It helps you take these kind of proctored subjective exams as well, not just objective or single option based exams. You can even have the student write for all subjects as subjective answers as well. Now there can be certain subjects for which examination is not in the format of just answers. Like if I have a subject with vocals, wherein I want the student to upload an audio file wherein he or she is submitting a vocal assignment to me, and I want to check, for arts and more say creational courses there. So how do I do that? There is no option. Even if you want to take an MCQ test, you will not be able to monitor such kind of examinations. So this portal like exam.net, it helps students, it helps learners to upload such kind of audio files as well. Now there is another functionality where a student is taking an exam and the student says that, okay, while taking the exam, my internet or my connectivity was lost. So you can cater to such kind of scenarios in your internal examinations. You can say, okay, never mind, connectivity was lost. Then, okay, if you are the only one left and rest others have taken that exam, then it's an internal paper. I will ask my teacher to create another paper and the student can take in for a second examination. But what when there are critical exams like the university exam? So if a university examination paper is out and the student gives the plea that my internet connectivity was lost, so it's a very valid answer. And at times, notorious students also opt to it when they don't want to function in the frame. So they will say, my internet connectivity is lost and I can't give this exam. So will you reconduct an university examination in such cases? How will you go about that? So for that purpose also exam.net has the functionality of just restarting from the point from where the examination was left. Because in other software, if in your Moodle site, if you are not able to submit your exam and your system has gone off, it will get automatically submitted. So you see, students who are facing connectivity issues can restart from the point where their exam was left, right? And then there is this problem also that in certain examinations, students have certain queries that, okay, this question is probably incorrect. In your personal setting, you can be very sure that the paper you are setting up is absolutely perfect and fine. But if they have a legitimate query, the question is out of context or the question is not being stated properly. So how do you cater to such queries? They will add to so many grievances in a remote manner. So when we take such examinations in a physical scenario as well, the students ask out the invigilator that, okay, can you please give me certain clarity on this? So what when you want to have a live interaction with your students while they take up that exam? So that functionality is also available with exam.net, wherein a teacher is logged into the exam.net portal. Students are giving examinations and there is a chat box, where they can write their queries and that message will reach to the teacher that, okay, the student is asking this question. How do you want to answer that? So such are the features which make exam.net a very powerful software. And this functionality, I'm talking of safe exam browser. So certain examinations on exam.net, if you mark them as highly secure exams, then there is a link for a safe browser utility that needs to be downloaded on a system. That link is present itself on the exam.net site. Whenever a student will be asked to take that exam, he will first have to download that safe browser utility, and then when the student starts the examination, it will appear in a full screen mode, like my presentation right now. Until and unless I don't escape the full screen mode, I'm not able to switch on any other tab or cheat. This is for online disintegrity where the students are trying to cheat from other sites or copying answers from different tabs. What if I say that the student is not able to open any other tab, but he or she can look at the book or the notes which are available in front of the student? So it also provides with the facility of video recording while giving such an exam. So complete proctoring, while you're taking examinations in a very secure mode. That is why exam.net is a very familiar choice. And all features that I have been mentioning here are what makes it a preferred advantageous solution for taking remote examination. Webcam monitoring, live chatting with teachers, uploading not just images but files in other formats also, right? So there can be some times when a student has to solve mathematical questions. It is very difficult to write those questions on an editor. Although an exam.net answer window has a formula editor, it is very difficult to type in all those information. So student can also scan and submit answers in the exam.net site, right? So all these features here with exam.net makes it a very preferable choice. Throughout 2020 up till 31st December 2020, it is free of cost for all users, for all usage because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it has been a preferred choice a lot for a lot many schools and universities abroad as well, for the purpose of conducting remote examinations. So this is one alternative that you have. It's not a part of Google Classroom. It's not a part of Moodle LMS. It's altogether a different application, which you have to just go and register yourself with, create your exam, and you can just share exam key. There is no hassle of registering a student on exam.net. Anyone who has the exam key can start the exam, right? And then you can ask for details that you require from the student. Student will fill in that information his or her own self, your name, your ID, and all that information. Student can fill, but you don't need to specifically register students for that exam. You just have to share that exam key with students. So apart from all alternatives available, this is one option that makes remote examinations a success with utmost integrity, because for us it is a new scenario. For us, we are facing this for the first time, that an examination is not to be carried out in a physical space. But if you talk of certifications or international program certifications, like you have Google certified programmer, or you have certain OCA, OCP certifications, these examinations have always been carried out in a distant manner, using all these features. Some of you who if would have appeared for these kind of certifications would have been relating to what I'm saying. So this phenomena has already been there, that certifications and critical examinations have been carried out in a distance mechanism using these approaches, and these are the best possible ways using which you can make sure that the maximum integrity is maintained. So with this, I complete the contents of my session. I will take up your queries now if you have any.
So is this ExamNet is free for universities? Only for schools, right?
No, you can register as a college also, ma'am. It will allow you to. If your college is not registered, then you have to enter the details and register it for the first time.
Okay, okay.
Like when I registered for my college, BVI CAM, it was not registered, it was not there. So I can enter the details of this college for the first time. So the only purpose of registering is that all teachers who register with exam.net and this college will be in one group. They'll be a part of the same school.
Whether we can integrate with our LMS platform? No.
No, that's not possible. It's a standalone system.
So uploading questions, everything, it's easy here? Or,
Yes,
how?
yes. You can upload questions in different formats. So like you can physically handwritten, you can type questions, and give the complete question paper. You can also upload PDF files. You can
Okay.
upload questions as PDF files. You can upload questions in different format, MCQ, multiple choice questions, you can do that. So different kinds of formats are available for uploading question paper.
So in the ExamNet website itself, they will be asking for registration, right?
Yes. So there are only two options. It's a very simple website. Either create an exam or give an exam. So if as a teacher you are logging in and the first thing that you want to do is create exam, they have just one page wherein they'll ask you for all this information and you will be able to create an exam. No extra complexities are there in this platform. I didn't understand your question, sir. Has ExamNet used for university grade card? I didn't get that. Can you elaborate the university grade card thing? So registration process I have detailed. So if any other queries or if it's still not clear, I can repeat.
Ma'am, can we download grade card in different formats like Excel or in some other formats?
Yeah, it will allow you. So if you're creating an exam and all those users who've taken the exam, so comprehensive summary of what their marks were and what grade did they get, it allows you to download in a downloadable Excel sheet format. It does.
Like in Moodle, we have facility that we can allow them to go backward and forward during the examination, like from question number 5 to 4, 4 to 5, like that. Or in
Yes.
some cases, if we don't allow backward, it is sequential. In that type of feature is also available there.
Yes, yes. You can specify that you want backward tracing. You can even specify if you want to give some time frame for one question. So all those kind of settings are available in exam.net. So if a student has
Okay.
seen, he can mark a right answer, or probably he can leave and go back. It will be marked as unanswered. So like a grid view opens in Moodle, that if there are 30 questions, how many of you attempted, how many of you are still left. So that functionality is also available in exam.net.
Okay. So today, are you going to give some live demo of that site or not?
No,
Or should
sir.
we go ahead with the YouTube videos will be available? I think so.
Yeah, I
On
have
that.
given this training earlier. I have given trainings earlier on practical demonstration of exam.net as well as your this one, mind maps,
Please,
even
ma'am,
Google Classroom.
please share that video link to us in the group.
Sure,
That
sure,
will
It is
be
sure,
asking
sir.
helpful.
for
They are
adding
available
schools.
in the BVI Cam's YouTube channel. So I've been giving these trainings. So there is, I think, one training I've given for exam.net where I created an exam and showed how to download Safe Browser and how to do the Safe Browser exam also. I'll share that.
Okay,
Yes,
ma'am.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
pardon, it is asking for schools only, no? It's saying schools like that. No problem, you can register.
if your school is not added, then click on others and enter information.
Oh, school and this college institutes are the
It's
same.
the same thing, same thing.
Okay. They won't object, right? Okay.
Yeah. Regular classroom examination is the best thing, sir. But as I said, we have no date to which we can return to. Any other queries?
Ma'am, do you have something like that exam.not other tool, which is
Other variants?
yes.
So we discussed, sir, in Google Classroom, we have Moodle, we can create individual quizzes as blank quiz forms using Google. So all those options are there, but this is the most preferred option when it comes to remote examinations. It's a lot used.
And ma'am, in the entire course, you people were focused on student, teacher, and something like that. So you didn't mention much about training courses and how training can be conducted, because you are also a training institute, and but I think you have been implemented Moodle on your organization also. So uh, it will also help in training education line.
Yes, sir. So the baseline remains the same if you want to conduct a course for training or learning purpose. But yeah, if you have certain specific use cases, then probably you can always explore that. The idea was to give you a basic know-how, since it's a capacity development workshop and we deal with the faculty development program. So we wanted to tell how in the academics or education sector will it be helpful. So for trainings, if there are some custom use cases, that can also be thought and built upon. The lines will be the same.
So it will be very easily implemented in training organization.
Yes, sir, there should not be any problem, but it depends upon your use case. We'll have to discuss first once. Huh?
So with this, if there is no query, so that is the end of the program.
Yes, if there are no queries, I will close the session and then we will meet at 4 for the valedictory.
For what?
The valedictory session, the final completion and like closure of the program, official closure.
And we have to submit that final assignment during this time.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all of you. So for nice lectures and cooperation and everything.
So if there are no queries, can I close the session?
Yes, please.